Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-host.
Dominic Castillo.
Alright, so how have you been, Dominic?
I've been pretty good. Everything seems fine so far. Nothing really has changed ever since last week has happened.
How's vacation been treating you?
I mean, vacation's pretty much been feeling the same. I mean, I don't really get to have a break because I still have to go to work, but I mean, it is what it is. But without the incentive that I have to without the incentive that I have work to do for school, gives me a little bit of freedom for the time being. I mean, I just don't have to worry about school for 2 months now until August. So I think we're chilling for now.
Yeah, best utilize the time before it's gone.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing. I've just been, other than helping around the house, I've just been trying to catch up with animes. Actually, hold on. I'll save that last part so that I can use that as a tie-in to today's topic. But I'm also on edge today, Dom. Would you like to know why?
Why? Tell me why.
So, a lot of people are reporting that there's apparently rumors that there will be more releases from staff and talent within the WWE today.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What? Don't tell me it's because of budget cuts.
It's more than likely going to be because of budget cuts. Now, I don't know. The last time they said this, it didn't happen. So, there's hope. But, seeing as how I've told you, there's been 2 essentially classes within the last couple of months.
Right.
I have a right to be on edge about what's going to happen, especially because due to recent conversations with Mr. Solis, I think I even told you I'm teetering on that line, and there's just gonna be that one final thing that pushes me over,
right,
to venturing on to other promotions,
right,
because I think I explained to you, they've done cuts before, but it's never been on this multitude. And it's also never been on this level of talented people,
Yeah.
So, I'm waiting to see what happens.
Don't you think at some point it's just going to be too much, and maybe we as the fans have to do something about it?
Oh, well.
Because I mean, they just can't keep getting away with it, just throwing off people, with potential careers on the line.
Yeah, so, I don't know if I ever went into detail about it with you, but what I told Mr. Solis, and I can't remember if I said this on an episode of a podcast, or this was one of those times when we just had a convo after the podcast recording. But I told them, for the longest time, because of how would you say it, so you know how nowadays a lot of people try and do things to not support certain things?
Right.
Hold on. So for me, while the WWE has a lot of good people in it and a lot of talent that I'd like to support, I don't really support a lot of what the company does,
Right.
One of the biggest things that they did was sign a contract so they could hold events out in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And this will probably be something I have to explain to you off recording, but let's just say a couple things went down that made talent not happy, let's just say there's something went down, and so it's a lot of people have been wanting them to get out of that deal, but yet they continue to go back and do shows there. There's I mean, early 2000s and stuff, the way they were handling concussions and stuff. Even now, I don't think, for the most part, a lot of talents, they say that when it comes to, like, certain things, like having to get, like, therapy for substance abuse, and
Yeah.
even in general, for the most part, like, certain, like, medical care, like, the WWE doesn't even cover it. It has to come out of their own pockets because they're independent contractors, so I don't even think they get health insurance from the WWE.
Right.
They might help, but, like, for the most part, it's coming out of your pocket, like how I mentioned. I don't think I explained it to you. So they're called independent contractors, but yet they hold essentially the status of employee for WWE. They're not allowed to take any other dates with any other companies, despite being known as independent contractors. WWE can own copyright over whatever name you use under them and stuff, despite being an independent contractor. And they only give them this independent contract status because then, as that, it's up to the talents to pay out of their pockets for food, travel, any, like I mentioned, health insurance type stuff. They have to worry. The talents have to worry about stuff like rental cars, plane flights, hotels, stuff like that, all while still paying for the stuff like family that's at home, like in one state,
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. I can't support, like, a lot of the stuff that they do, and, like, obviously, like, there's other big companies too, but it's like when it comes to, like, the bigger companies, it's harder. But, like, with WWE, it's kind of easier to, like, not support,
Yeah.
Because the way I told Celeste was like I told you, they have weekly shows. The last time I watched the weekly shows, like, weekly, was 2016. And ever since then, like, I've never watched the weekly shows. I've never really bought merchandise. I've never, basically a lot of things, I've never really supported. The most I've done was give them the $10 a month for their network to watch the guys whenever they're on, like, pay-per-view and stuff.
Yeah.
That was my way of, like, being like, I'm doing everything in my power to not support this company other than giving them these $10 a month to support not the company, but the employees under the company,
Yeah.
Kind of tying into, sure, there's a lot of fast food places with big companies that are probably bad, but a lot of times, you want to go just so that the people that have jobs there can get paid,
Yeah, I guess.
So it's like similar thing, I'm not going for the company. I'm going because I want to support the employees that are under the company. And
yeah,
I told Solis, if there's, like, as much as I want to support a lot of the guys that I have there, it's like, if there's one final thing to set me off, then no longer am I giving them that $10. No longer am I giving them that little bit of support. I'm off to somewhere else.
Yeah, I get you. Say, is there, like, any other way to, like, directly support the wrestlers?
So there would be if, again, if they were actually considered independent contractors rather than independent contractors that are used that the name is used as a disguise so they aren't considered employees to get full benefits. And that is, if they were considered independent contractors, they would be able to have their own shops for their gear, and they would more than likely use this one place, Pro Wrestling Tees. And that one, they collaborate with a lot of different wrestlers to get their merchandise up there. And, for the most part, if you're buying that merch, it's more than likely going straight to them. Whereas because they're all the merch for the wrestlers in WWE or under the WWE shop, it's more than likely that they might get some of the money, but WWE is probably taking a cut out of it as well.
Oh yeah, true.
So I don't think there's really any way to fully straight line support them, especially because listen to this. Despite being independent contractors, last year a lot of them during the pandemic, trying to make a couple extra bucks for themselves, started doing stuff like Twitch, Cameo, stuff like that.
Right.
And the WWE told them no. And everyone was like, okay, maybe it's a thing that, you can't use the name that you're under with the WWE to make money, right? So then they started using their real names, and even then they were told no. That they couldn't even do that.
Yikes, dude.
So it's like, even one of the ways to get these people to start connecting with fans on a more like personal level and support them on that personal level, couldn't even do that. The only ones that were able to do it were the NXT talents, which NXT is kind of like the people try and say it's not, but it's still kind of the developmental show for the main roster, like the main two shows.
Right.
Only the people down in that roster are able to do it because they're not paid anywhere near the level that the main roster people are paid. But
wow.
So, yeah, it's like there's virtually no way to support them on that level.
I feel like there's gonna be just another people are just gonna pass this on.
Yeah.
Or well, WWE is gonna try to pass this on, but I mean, at some point there's gotta be a tipping point, right? They just can't keep on going along with this. But I mean,
well, the tipping point has been they've slowly lost viewership over the years, but you can't even really bring that up because everyone uses the argument that, oh, who watches cable anymore? Which is it has some truth to it. Like you can chalk up the loss of viewership to the fact that no one really uses cable anymore. It's all about like online and streaming.
Right.
But also, it's like, I don't know, dropping from 4 million viewers a week to only like struggling to get 1 million kind of says something about your current product and business.
True.
But I will tell you this though, there is going to be a tipping point for me, and it might come soon. Who knows? Heck, it might even come after we're done recording this, and I go on social media and see that people have been cut.
Hopefully, it's not soon, man.
Yeah. But another thing that I've been trying to keep myself occupied with is playing a lot of games that I haven't had the chance to due to school,
Right.
Despite having school, I found a way to finish my first playthrough of Nier Automata, but, as I mentioned, I didn't put enough time into that first playthrough because I didn't know how quickly it would go.
Right.
I replayed through BioShock 1 and absolutely loved it. I started Persona 5 Royale. And a bunch of other games. And then I moved on to BioShock 2, and I really haven't been enjoying it as much as 1, but I think I'll still find a way to finish it.
Right.
But I bring this up because, inspired by a recent tweet I saw, I believe it was from Avalanche, he proposed a question to his followers on, do they believe gaming is going through a drought right now? And I thought that would be something interesting for us to talk about because we kind of touched on it when we were talking about, has gaming gotten too repetitive? So, to answer the question, what do you think, Don? Do you think gaming is kind of going through a drought right now? And I have a couple of questions to build off of this, but first and foremost, we'll answer the question simply, do we think gaming is going through a drought right now?
Personally, and for as a general, for every single genre of games, I feel like yes, there has been a very slow movement in terms of the churning out of games, in terms of their production and of their quality and value. But I could definitely expand into the different genres of games and why there's a drought in each category. But I don't know if you want to start or if you want me to start like on a specific genre.
Well,
Or
that's kind of one of the side questions I want to go into, and I'll personally say I agree with you. I think there is a big drought, but one of the main questions I thought of and saw a lot of other people not really saying the same question, but it's where I got the idea from, was a lot of people were saying, oh, maybe it's because you guys are only playing multiplayer games and you're not branching out into different genres. Do you think many people see that gaming has a drought because they aren't expanding into different genres? But then you propose the idea that different genres as well are suffering a drought, and it's not just one sole genre.
yeah, I think you're right about that, about the multiplayer aspect in terms of people not wanting to branch out because, unfortunately, I mean, maybe this not might be for every company, but usually the big companies make these huge games just for the incentive of profit, right? I mean, that's why the battle pass, like, you know, a battle pass system sort of exists. And usually every single game that has a battle pass is like, you know, the big game, like, you know, we got Call of Duty, we have Fortnite and all those type of games. But the only reason why there's so is because a bunch of people hop on into a multiplayer game. Most of these battle pass games don't have a single player aspect to it. I mean, we already have, Battlefield 2042 coming out. And it's solely a multiplayer game. And I'm not sure if it even has a campaign in the first place. I might be wrong. But even before the game comes out, like months before, they already announced that it's going to have a battle pass system along with it. So, I mean, along with Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, they already threw in a battle pass system. But no one focuses on the multiplayer anymore. Everyone just focuses just solely on the multiplayer. Because I mean, usually the money incentive is what hits everyone the most. But let's look at Black Ops 2 and like Black Ops 1. Like the multiplayer was heavily like emphasized. I mean, the multiplayer and the campaign were heavily emphasized. But there were a lot of quality placed into both, like a lot of story. So much story that you get to remember the majority of the characters from the campaign, such as like Frank Woods from Black Ops, from the Black Ops series. And we still remember him just because of the campaign. We still remember all the way, you know, now here, like 10, 12 years later? Mm-hmm. Like all the way here in Cold War. Frank Woods is one of the most memorable characters from the campaign because the campaign was solely emphasized and not just the multiplayer, which was back then not the incentive for money. You know? I think it's mostly now on how these days the campaign is not really solely, how do you call it? The main story of every game is not very emphasized to the point where it's not memorable, and it's just mostly used out for a money incentive.
Yeah, it's not really their biggest priority when creating games.
Exactly, and not only that, but mostly people are trying to push like for like better graphics, you know? Like literally on YouTube you always see like a comparison between like, let's say, Battlefield and Call of Duty and I don't know, Arma 3 or Arma 4 or something like that. And they always want to compare like the best graphics. So, you know, being a game developer, you don't want to be on the YouTube, you don't want to be on a YouTube video seeing that your game is having the worst graphics out of every other game, right? So they want to keep pushing for the higher graphics boost, best, frame rates, best 4K, 8K displays or whatever. And it only pushes for less amount of time. It reduces the amount of time for like a story team, you know, base, just so that they can create a good foundation for a good story. Because I'm pretty sure you played the campaign, I'm assuming, for Call of Duty Cold War?
I have not. That's why.
Like, exactly.
I don't think I've played a campaign since Black Ops 2.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Mostly, these games only use the incentive for money, or like they try to like appeal for players just in the terms of multiplayer. Ever since Black Ops 4 came out, like no campaign even existed along with the game. But I believe they introduced the Battle Pass with it, and just a simple, a Battle Royale and a multiplayer along with the game.
Yeah.
But no single player. They didn't even include the single player. Like, that just shows how much time that they don't have or they don't want to implement into a single player, because they know it's just going to be a waste of money when they could just be throwing or getting even more money just from a multiplayer with a battle pass along with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like the majority aspect in terms of Call of Duty and like shooter games of why games are being seen as very dry these days, only because it's the same formula every time. They throw in a multiplayer, new weapons, or a multiplayer with like new gadgets or something like that, and they throw in the battle pass system just so people get the incentive to keep playing, so they could get that like level tier 100 of the sorts.
Yeah.
And such and such.
That's a big thing. I'm just realizing as you're talking about this, it's like so often or not, like the game dies down in hype after like months, like a month or two of release. But you still see people playing it because they bought the battle pass and they're like, oh, well, I might as well get the most of the money that I spent to get this thing. Let me just grind and get all the way to 100. And then they repeat that process in order to keep people there, because it's like if they include something in there that they know people want, and they'll pay that money, and then they'll be forced to play their game because, well, if not, you just wasted money.
True. I think there's only one positive aspect about this, and it's the free DLC that's been coming out recently for Cold War. Because, all the way back then, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, you had to buy the DLC individually for, like, the new maps and new weapons for, like, what, $15 each? $10 each around there?
15.
$15 each? Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And now these days, it's free, everyone gets it for free. Way back when it was for Modern Warfare 2019, and now for Cold War, it's all been free. So, I mean, that's the only free aspect. But aside from that, the majority of these games are just simply getting turned down for money at this point.
And going back to the main point, obviously you can't fault people for wanting to play multiplayer games, especially if they want to just have a game to play with a group of friends, But I do think for some people, they think that, again, gaming is going through a drought because they're not expanding into different genres. But then I get two sides of that where, like, I'm like, yeah, it's because you're not expanding to different genres. Look at all these other games in different genres that are so good.
Right.
But then I realize, oh, wait, all the games that I'm thinking of and recommending, they all came out before. There's nothing, like, new this year that is, like, like, oh, yeah, you should definitely replay this recent game that came out,
Right.
Like, all the games that I think about, it's like, obviously, like, Nier Automata, the Persona games. Like, this is me just thinking about, like, single-player games, RPGs, different, like, action, adventure, stuff like that,
Right.
The BioShock collection, Hollow Knight, I don't know, just, like, a bunch of other different games, right? And it's just like, well, you slowly realize those games came out, like, 2-3 years ago, even more, and it's like, well, dang, maybe gaming is in a drought because there's nothing right now that's being recommended.
Yeah.
And going back to your thing about different genres, I saw someone bring up fighting games, and I'm just like, what fighting games are out right now that people are even playing? Like, I don't know if you remember, I think it was last year that the Game Awards for their fighting category, they gave it to, like, Mortal Kombat, and that game came out in like 2019-18 or something like that.
Oh, I didn't even know.
I think it was last year. I forgot what year it was, but like they gave the award to a Mortal Kombat game that wasn't even released that year, or even I think the year before. So it was like, so when you look at stuff like that, I mean, sure, it's kind of difficult to go just based off of Game Awards stuff, but like, I don't know, maybe it has some validity to it if you're thinking about it,
True. But I think it's also like the drought of games has become due to how do you call it, the lack of communication with the players themselves of what they want. For example, like racing games, for example. I think Forza Horizon just came out with like their new map for Mexico, and And I think no one wanted to play in Mexico. You know what I'm saying? I think for like 10 years, in total, 10 years, the community for like the racing game series have asked for a game to like be placed in like in Japan, for example, right? Japan's like one of the most like crazy spots for racing, but no big developer like from Microsoft or from how do you call it, or from EA has ever made a game based in Japan. You know what I'm saying? I think the how do you call it, the biggest how do you say drought in terms of like the racing scene is just the lack of communication. But like to move on from this point, not only that, I think the lack of drought of games also comes in like with the background side of things when it comes to like the game developers and like the people themselves like making the games. Because I'm pretty sure like there's been a bunch of good indie games that have been announced to come out, but there's always like some sort of drama in the background between like the director of the games and like firing like the individual like workers, like game developers who are like working their butts off, but they just get fired just because of like lack of quality, and they just can't seem to find good people to work on their games. If that makes sense. And I mean that then creates a lack of like passion per se, thus leading to a dry game or just a game just that's made for money and not with true passion behind the work.
I get you.
Yeah.
I wonder, because it's like I'm thinking about it, and even like, as I mentioned, even now in like different genres, you are seeing droughts and there not being much variety in a sense. Like, I think that's another thing that ties to it. It's like, after years and years of gaming, maybe it's kind of hard to come up with original ideas, And
right.
I think that's why you see a lot of, like, remasters lately. Because it's like, well, we're struggling to come up with something. Why not remaster a game? And throw it out because, nostalgia's a really big factor, and they know people will buy it,
Right.
Well, they know people will buy it if it's a good either remaster or it's a loyal remaster in the sense that, they remaster it and keep it true to how it was, or they remaster it and just improve upon its previous, like, mechanics and graphics and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think about it a lot, and I just think, like, to see, like, how many games got remastered within the past, like, 2 years. And it's like, because, like I said, they know people will buy into the nostalgia factor of it.
True.
But then, I mean, that kind of also shows, man, gaming really is in a tough spot then if they're struggling to come out with different games. I mean, going back to the campaign thing, I guess you could say Rainbow's coming out with a campaign with the Extraction game coming out soon, and we still don't even know, going back to your communication thing, we still don't even know if that's going to be a separate game or if it's going to be added to the base game.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a separate game on its own, I think. I mean, that's why it has the $50, $60 price tag.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking, but still so many people for some reason are confused about it. But I mean, even then, like, I don't know, you look, like, I think we talked about it a lot, like, we've always thought, like, games like Rainbow and Overwatch were sort of unique, like, especially a unique take on the multiplayer scene, but even then, they've slowly died out. I mean, they're not dying out in, like, the player-based sense. I mean, they kind of are, but, like, man, it's like you really see so many people struggling just to even play one game,
True.
And then, like, of course, like, my biggest frustration, they added crossplay recently, both Overwatch and Rainbow, and it's like, great, you added it about 4 years too late.
Oh, yeah, that too as well, yeah.
It was like, you're adding it now when like, how is it that you couldn't find ways to implement this? Not even, like, when they dropped, but, like, maybe 2 years into it. Because, like, 2 years ago, games were already finding ways to be crossplay. Like Modern Warfare found ways to be crossplay. Cold War has found ways to be crossplay and all this. It's like, how is it that 2 years ago you couldn't find a way to make it crossplay? Not even just with PC, at least within the two consoles.
Yep.
I mean, games have even found a way to be crossplay with like the Switch, and yet, you know, it took them till now, 2021. For Overwatch, 5 years later. For Rainbow, I think it's 6 years later? It's like, how? I mean, obviously I can say this because I'm not like a game developer and don't know, but it's like, I'm not saying it because I think I can do it. I'm saying it because I look at other games and how quickly they were able to do it. It's just like, how did you not get it out years ago when your game was arguably at its peak?
Mm-hmm.
Also, do you think another thing factoring into the drought is that people get... Well, here's the thing. Do you think people are getting through the games too quickly? Or do you think that's just, what's it called? An effect of how you were saying games not having that much effort put into them?
I think it might be a mix of both. Because you already know how we already have like speed runs and stuff like that on like Twitch and like YouTube. Like I'm pretty sure there's even like videos on like the game, like the original like game developers like reacting to like a 10-minute like speed run of like a game that's of the campaign that's meant to take like 4 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you call it? I feel like the majority of developers who see that there's many people who aren't really interested in the campaign anymore, and they just solely focus on the multiplayer, just simply start to stray away from what the campaign and just mostly focus on the multiplayer, because they know that once the campaign is done, they will just simply go straight to the multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
That's why there's never really an expansion onto the campaign unless it's a different entire game, like a sequel or a prequel. Like for example, like Grand Theft Auto, right? The campaign has been solely intact. It has never been touched once for 7 years. 7 years, but the multiplayer got a completely like whole rework done. You know, like they allowed for like crossplay. They allowed for, you know, they're still spanning over like 3 generations now, with like free updates for every year. Free updates. Not a single person had to pay for a single cent of content unless they want for like in-game money. But just like that on its own shows how the incentive for like pushing multiplayer and not wanting to do anything with single player anymore, because they think the single player on its own is already great. They think that there's no reason just to continue on single player because they just know they're just going to finish it in whatever speed they do it and just fall into multiplayer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So like, because like usually the single player is just to introduce the player to like the story and the overall scene and the context and the background, and it's just the multiplayer that just gives them, you know, the freedom to play of what to do, like in whatever game mode, in whatever type of genre, if that makes sense. Yeah. But then again, they don't always need the single player. Something they don't even care about the single player to like just to play the multiplayer, especially if it's like a simple shooter game. They don't really need a background of what's going on. They just want to, you know, just look around and just shoot people.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. Now, I guess the final question that I have to propose is, do you think the pandemic played a part into gaming suffering this drought? Because the reason I bring this up is because, like, I think about the gaming community, and I know that other than aside from like a few, like a 1%ish, like, you know, type of thing, you know, that includes like streamers and just people who have more time on their hands. For the most part, the gaming community has stuff like school, work, and, you know, even other hobbies. Right. And that would limit their amount of time on the game, you know, to maybe only 2 hours, you know? Right. And so they would get like 2 hours, maybe either a day or just like every other day, on the game. But then the pandemic happens. A lot of people are laid off of work. School goes online, and I don't know about other people, but I think me and you can attest was easier and could have been wrapped and was always usually wrapped up within an hour. And so you see that happen, got more time on your hands, more time for playing these games, more time for you to slowly burn out from playing these games. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I get you.
And I think you and I can personally attest to this. Playing the same game every day for the past year, over and over. Luckily, school came back in, and so that limited it, but still, day after day, hour after hour, playing those same games, you're sort of inflicting it onto yourself that you're going to get bored of it. So, I don't know, do you think the pandemic played a part? And not only just that, giving people more time, but now it's like these people are working under worse conditions, so they can't put their best efforts into the game. And obviously, there's other things to worry about. So, maybe gaming isn't a main focus. So, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think this pandemic has played a part in it?
I think that yes, just to throw my answer out there, that it definitely did affect it. But I think it's, how do you call it? I think there's a deeper reason as to why this happens, and why this happened in terms of the, how do you call it, the drought or per se or something like that. It's because I think it just affected everyone, how do you call it, personally per se, lives were absolutely altered, because of the pandemic. People had to start staying inside, playing the same games over and over again. But not that, but the game developers themselves had to transfer studios, transfer back to home, transfer the computers to home, so that they could begin working from home, which absolutely slowed down the process of creating new games and the story passion stuff, and along with the game developing. I think the huge contributor to why we feel like there's a gaming drought is definitely because of the pandemic, alongside with the fact that many people were drastically affected by it, meaning that they either couldn't play, either they couldn't keep playing games, or they only had too much time to play games because they had nothing else to do aside from online schooling. And if the people who couldn't play as much games because either they actually got hit by the pandemic bad, and meaning they had to take care for themselves or take care for the lives of others, or they had to deal with other stuff like financial and stuff, keep trying to attend for a job or try to keep their job, because as many people got left unemployed, which is a bad thing when you got nothing else to do. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I
got you on that one. And it's tough. We're slowly pulling out of it, but I don't know. I guess the main thing to get from here on is, do you think the gaming scene can recover from this?
I mean, I think we as humans have been known to recover from the most horrible things. So I think slowly and going on forth, we should be able to go back to a state of just being normalcy. Yeah. At some point, everything's gonna go back to normal. But in terms of the gaming drought, I feel like there's still gonna be the push for the incentive, just money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just to pickpocket players just for their battle pass system, for their skins, for their Fortnite skins, their weapon skins, vehicle skins, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I get you. Do you think there's gonna be another big time game that takes over, or do you think it's gonna follow the same pattern that we've seen throughout this drought, where game drops, maybe gets hyped for a month and then just falls off the face of this earth?
I think there's still gonna be these huge games. We still got Hideo Kojima, in the works of making a new game. We don't know what it is yet, but there's still been some really good like teasers here and there, like other game developers, like who are solely just based on single player games. Who you never know might throw on an absolute, crazy huge single player game. But I mean, as all single player games go, they're probably just gonna die off a month or two after, unless they continue to add on through the story through like small updates and stuff like that. But then again, people are gonna like not want to do that because it's just a single player game at the end of the day, and we're just gonna focus on like the multiplayer aspect. If there is multiplayer aspect, then more people are gonna want to play it. But if it's a single player game, people are not gonna probably want to play it because it's usually a long story and they just want all the action, immediately.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean that's the current viewpoint of that players want to play these days.
Yeah, I get you. So, I don't know, 3 minutes left. Final question. If you could recommend one game to help someone get through this drought until like a new game gets released or something, what game do you recommend them? Or like, if they want to try and branch out from multiplayer, I guess in a sense, what game do you recommend them?
Samurai Kagura. That's it. No, I'm just kidding. I would definitely go with the. I mean, to branch off and to begin, I feel like. How would you say it? What would be a good game? I think an absolute class. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I have a couple in mind, but go ahead.
I feel like a good game to begin with, in terms of like single player aspect to begin off. I feel like a good game would probably be. Could you go first? I gotta think of it.
So, the one game I'd recommend because of recently playing it and remembering how just great it was, both somehow still holding up in mechanics and story, BioShock 1. And if I wanted to introduce someone to a new sort of topic and they wanted it to be like very time consuming, right? Like that they're going to put hours in, they more than likely will not get bored, hopefully. And, it just helps them get through the drought. I think I'd introduce them to the RPG category because of how much of a grind it takes, So like, show them, I don't know, games like Nier Automata, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem,
Right.
But those are like the typical games I would recommend because it takes grinding and it takes time,
True. I think now that you mentioned that, I think the Yakuza series would definitely be a good introduction to the game, especially with the current remasters that have been coming out from the series in general. Those games take like hours, each of them. I'm pretty sure there's like 7 to 8 games that have been released. Each of them with like entire like huge jam pack of just a bunch of content, like side quests and like sub stories and stuff like that. The Yakuza series is like, it's just a huge, like, it's a small city that the whole game is placed in, but there's just so much content that they can just throw you hours into it. Also, Skullgirls and Samurai Kagura, but that's for another time. The Yakuza series is definitely a game that I would introduce.
All right. And with that being said, we'll close off here. I've been Jack, joined by my fellow co-host,
Dom.
I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. As always, remember, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you. We'll see you in the next episode.